I hope everyone can see my screen. So today we are going to be talking about being a software developer in a cooperative bank. And I'm going to be touching around areas which will give you some idea on what skills you will need to perform well in this environment, and also to be able to enter such an environment. So to start us off, let's start with the interview process. So the interview process for Cooperative Bank is quite simple. So you'll normally have a written exam evaluating basic programming concepts and database concepts. So you'll be asked questions around object-oriented programming, to write SQL queries and such. So the next step is normally an oral interview whereby you have an HR partner, you have someone, let's say the head of architecture, and also the head of system development. So this will range from HR questions, human resource questions, why do you want to join the company, and such stuff. Programming questions, such as do you know what asset is, how to handle different exceptions, which you might find in your code. Like an example, you're uploading a file. What possible exceptions will you handle when a user is uploading a file? So such basic questions. Then the next step after that is normally offer and negotiation. So this is usually a very important bit. Like as a student, you are joining a company. Most of us, like me, for example, had a lot of problems around offers and negotiation. So you should also practice how to negotiate well, and to know which kind of offer to take on and which one to reject. So the next step is we are going to, in order for you to understand the day-to-day activities in a cooperative, I'll give you an overview of the software development process, SDLC, although there's Agile nowadays. So the first step is normally business requirement gathering. We'll go into details about this. Architecture and solution design. UX, this is a user experience and user interface design. Then you'll start development. Then there's a system integration testing. Normally, you'll hear people calling it SITs. User acceptance testing. These are UATs. Then from the UATs, you will have one or two issues. There you will do the fixes, development. Then after, you will have another round of UATs and SITs before deployment to production. So after deployment, you will have monitoring your solution, which you might get feedback, which may return you again back now to business requirement gathering, architecture, and so forth. So when you talk about business requirements, this is the step where a business analyst gathers the business needs needed for a particular system and creates a business requirement document, or a BRD in short. So for example, let's say we have a business unit that needs to send SMS to users. So an analyst will come up with a user journey or a user stories. So these are user stories, for example, he or she would write down a system user logs into the system and upload a bulk file with phone numbers of customers who should receive a marketing campaign message. So user logging into the system and uploading a bulk file. So this is very high level, and it carries the journey which the users of the system will be going through before they perform a particular functionality. Then the second one will be, let's say, when a customer transacts in an ATM, the customer should receive an SMS immediately that they have withdrawn money from a particular ATM. Then another user story will be, user should be able to log in to the system and view reports of all messages that have been sent out. So this step is a business analyst is normally in between what we call business and IT. So they will be able to to take business language and convert it into some high-level IT language. So after this will be the solution design. And a solution design is a high-level design to guide the developer on how to build the software. This is created by a solution architect. So this will contain info such as the different systems that the new software will integrate to, how these systems will be communicating. Will it be REST, SOAP, SMTP, HTTP, such stuff? Databases to be used. Are we using Oracle, MySQL? And which tables will we be using? Then also a solution design will have information about the deployment architecture. So are we going to be deploying this solution in a Windows server, in a Linux server? What needs to be installed in this Linux server? If it's Java, Nginx, for example. Then when you are dealing with a huge system, you might need to think of how to load balance your application. So this is where he or she will be able to define a load balancer that will be handling the different traffic. So as you have noted, in IT, there are different fields. So this business analyst can be a computer science student who is interested like in the business world, for example. A solution architect is a computer scientist too. So most solution architects I've seen normally start off as developers, then gradually they become very good solution architects. Then the next step after solution architecture, we normally, if it's a web application, for example, you would have a UX UI designer creating a wireframe of the different login pages, how the different reports will look. And now as a developer, your work will be converting the solution design and this UI UX design into a working software. So if it's a web application, you'll convert the UI UX wireframes to CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So JavaScript, you can use Vue.js, Angular, or any other, or even jQuery. Then you will create a backend application using the recommended languages. So normally, you will find that most organizations, like a Cooperative Bank, for example, we use a particular set of languages which are recommended. And this is always set such that you are able to collaborate as a large team. So let's say you are a team of 100 developers. If everyone speaks Python, Node.js, Alexa, and so on, you will have some issues collaborating. So you will find that organization have a set of languages where you can pick what you need to develop. After development, what will follow up is SITs, UATs, and production deployment. So SITs, you will have a technical lead. So the technical lead will test the different systems. So let's say I'm integrating to M-Pesa, for example. The technical lead will come and test that M-Pesa system, that it's working okay. We'll test, let's say, the core banking APIs, that's working okay. Then now do like another test from my system to those APIs to confirm that everything is okay. Then the UAT is normally done by the end users. So these are the business guys who are going to be interacting with that product day to day. Then now you will deploy to production. So in a Cooperative Bank, for example, my role is normally guiding SITs Then also before production deployment, coming up with a document on how to deploy to production. So let's say if it's a web application, I would have a set of steps. First, install Nginx, create a folder to host those CSS files, then copy the files to this directory. Such steps will guide the production deployment. And as a developer, when this deployment is going on, you are there also to help in case any issue arise. Yeah. So let me touch on my day-to-day activities in Coopbank. So from time to time, we have new projects. So I will review the business requirement or the BRD for this new project to be able to understand what the business actually wants. Then after this, I will go through the solution designs. So these solution designs will be able to guide me in what tables are needed to be created. What will the application look like? Will I need a front end? Will I need a back end? Jobs. Let's say if it's a scheduler, what kind of cron job should I have? And how periodic will they be running? So this solution design will be able to answer most of my questions on what I need to build. Then I will go on with the development. So development, I will pick a language of choice and start development. Then also, as a developer, depending on the organization, we normally provide a level 2 support for production systems. So for example, let's say you had built something a year ago and it's facing some issues in production and you need to debug, see where the problem is. So from time to time, you are providing a level 2 support. So in case of any questions, you can send them on chat, then I can answer them after this. So let me touch on some interesting problems that you face when working for an organization like Coopbank. So one of the things you have to do is build for scale. So you will ask your questions such as, how do I optimize my application that's able to handle millions of customers? So it changes your thinking a bit. So let's say, for example, myself, I was initially in startups where our load, let's say our customers were not that many. We would have like 50 transactions per day, 200. But now you come into a place where you are dealing with 200 to 300K transactions per day. So how do you like optimize your code? So in this, you would have to think around a lot of things from the databases. Do you cache when you are coding? Which data structures are you using? Are they using too much memory? And also the speed of your function. Is it fast enough? Are you using multi-threading? Like, are you using several threads? Something like that. Then also you will have to think about handling third-party failures. So as a bank, you're integrating to different components from the core banking to mobile money providers to KPLC and MTOs. These are MTOs like Western Union and stuff. So you'll have to think because these transactions have different legs. E.g., when you are sending money from your bank to M-Pesa, you'll have to call the core banking. Then after that, after success, you'll have to call the mobile money provider. In case the mobile money provider, you'll have to ask yourself some questions. Do you reverse the initial transaction in the core banking? Do you retry? So depending sometimes on the business requirements, you'll have to handle these different scenarios. Then also one other exciting thing, which I'm passionate about a lot, is around performance optimization. So you notice that your production application is suddenly slow. How do you find the root cause? In the corporate world or in the working environment, you will hear people talking about RCA, like a root cause analysis. So you had an issue, you must write up on the steps you took to resolve such an issue. So some of the things I've dealt with is on memory. So I would have to ask myself, am I using too much memory? So let's say I wake up one day and the memory usage on a particularly large box is 99%. So we would have to find out which process or which application is using too much memory. Your DB is suddenly slow. So you would have to check your DB queries to know if you have written a bad query. So let's say, for example, you have a select star. And after that select star, you are only using two columns, let's say first name and last name. So you'll need to optimize that query first of all, from changing it from select all to just querying the columns that you need. And also some of the questions you'll ask yourself is on indexing the tables. So these are concepts that I think, are quite wide, but the more years of experience and the more reading, you will be able to understand these bits, and you can specialize in one area. Yeah, so some of the other interesting problems you would have to deal with in the job environment is working with the complex business requirements. So in the past 2 years, for example, I've been working on this project called Coffee DSS. It's used to automate the coffee sale process. So if you have interacted with tea or coffee, you know that it goes through different stages. So you will have different stakeholders, what we call the millers, a warehouse where coffee is stored, marketers, people who market this coffee in Kenya and outside Kenya. You will have the farmer, you will have the buyer, you will have an exchange called the National Coffee Exchange. So in the last 2 years, since it's an agile project, you will find that requirements keep changing. And as a developer, as you are building, you will have to design your system such that it's able to accommodate changes. So this is a skill set you learn over time. Over time, you will know why you write a method in a specific way rather than in another way. So this comes with experience. But yeah, in large organizations or large startups, you have to deal with complex business requirements, which now your data structure skills come into play. So talking about the technology stack that we use in Cooperative. So for the backend technologies, we are using the recommended languages that we have gone with is Java, C#, PHP, Visual Basic, but this is normally for legacy application. Then we have languages such as Node.js. For the front-end technologies that we use Vue.js, Angular, React, and Bootstrap. So in this area of front-end, since it's vastly moving, most companies are more friendly, like you can use a wide variety of technologies. But when you come to backend, you'll find that there are certain languages, like Cooperative Bank are settled for this, but you will find some teams, such as the data science, will use Python, for example. So to continue on the technology stack, so we have a middleware called TIBCO. So TIBCO is normally to expose SOAP and REST APIs. So this middleware is normally codeless. It's more like a WordPress where you drag and drop features to be able to build APIs. So it's really a good tool to expose APIs really fast. Like I've seen, personally, I don't use this middleware, but I have seen my colleagues able to achieve something in 4 hours, which if I could have coded, it could have taken me, let's say, 1.5 days. So we have some tools that can help you when exposing APIs. Then we have databases. For databases, the organization is currently using Oracle and MS SQL by Microsoft. Then for the server technologies, we are using a private cloud. So a private cloud is where you host your own servers. So you have a set of racks and you host it in your data center. So you'll find that currently our laws do not allow banks and telcos to host in the public cloud such as AWS. So currently, private cloud is what most banks and telcos are using. And here you will find Windows and Linux-based servers. So mainly Linux is used. But from time to time, you will find applications that you will have to deploy on Windows. And also the exciting thing about COP is you can use any tools while developing. So you want to try out a new library or a new tool or a new tool. Let's say you want to cache your data. You will be able to use a Redis. You want to use a Kafka. You want to use a RabbitMQ. So you are able to use any of these. And my team members in Cooperative Bank. So we are made up of user experience and user interface developers. So these are people who come up with wireframes. They will tell you that I want the login page to look like this. The button should be at this position. The color should be this. So as a front-end developer, this makes your work really easy because you don't have to think about colors. You don't have to think about where you should position. So it lessens the amount of thinking you have to do and code mainly. Then we have front-end and mobile application developers. So front-end will focus only on CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. Then mobile will build for Android and iOS applications. Then we have integration developers. These developers mainly build on the typical platform to expose APIs. So let's say you need to talk to the core banking via Java application. You want to go to the core banking directly. So you would have to go through like a set of API or a middleware such that, so from this middleware, when you expose an API like that, it can be reused. So the mobile application developer will be able to call that middleware. The backend developer will be able to call that middleware instead of your Java application talking to the core banking direction. So where we also have full stack developers. These are developers who do both the backend and the front end. So you'll find yourself building a Java application, then switching to building in Vue.js, Angular, React. Then also we have DevOps and automation engineers. So currently we are using Jenkins for CI/CD, that is continuous integration and continuous development. But in future, you might hear of tools such as Circle CI. Then also we have JMeter for load testing. So normally before we take an application to production, we ensure that it has been load tested and stress tested to be that we are able to know, like when we reach this set of customers, let's say 100,000, this is our limit. And this is the memory and the CPU that we should have for that particular instance. Yeah. So let me talk about my skill set a bit. So currently, the languages that I'm using is Java, Spring Boot mainly. So with things such as Hibernate, JPM. Then I also code in C#, and then I use Vue.js for front-end application. And I use Laravel mainly for personal projects. Then I'm also skilled in system administration. So when it comes to Linux, I know my way around it. I can do things like a VPN setup, a tool called Strong Swan. And when it comes to environmental setup, so let's say you want to install Java, you want to install Nginx, I'm able to do that. So these are the skills whereby You will find that in school, you are not taught, but it's important to know such that when you're in a corporate environment, there are people who are meant to do that, but it's often good to understand, and you will be able to debug issues. Let's say when you have an installation problem, if it's on a Linux box, you can be able to debug with the system administrator. Then also, one of the things I'm into of late is containerization. So you might have heard about Docker and Kubernetes. So as a Cooperative Bank, we have adopted this. So most of our applications nowadays are being deployed on Kubernetes. And I think I've seen some benefits out of this because we are more stable. We are now able to scale better. Like one of the example is there's a notification engine I built around 6 months ago, and I was able to scale down the time that the previous application was doing from around 4 hours to 5 minutes. So the other application was scanning around 1.2 million customers to send notifications to. So you'll find that it was taking too long from using that typical platform, around 4 to 5 hours. But with Kubernetes, where I'm able to break down that application to microservices, I was able to scale really well. So other opportunities which I can recommend is DevSecOps. I don't know if that's the spelling, but this is, for my definition, this is a developer with cyber security skills. So if you are into cyber security and you have a bit of a knowledge on development, this is one of the areas that is really marketable in my organization and also talking to friends. Then also there is a database administration. If you are into storage, how data is stored, if it's, let's say, Oracle, NoSQL databases, this is an area also you can get into. Then also there's an exciting area of data science and data analytics. So let's say as a bank, you will build something called a credit score, such that when somebody is borrowing money from MCOP Cash, or for example, from MCOP Cash, you will be able to score them based on your transactional data. So you will pull data from your core banking and then run through a couple of models and be able to give a particular customer, let's say, a score of 500, another one a score of 250, something like that. So data science and data analytics, this is where I'm seeing the world heading to also. So areas I think, I need to improve on currently. I think so far I've been facing some issues when it comes to optimization. So whereby you will get an issue and you don't know your way around it. So I wish I had grasped the low-level knowledge, such as in databases, in Linux. So I've had some issues in Kubernetes where I struggled a bit to debug on how the different components were working. But after going through some few Linux networking tutorials, I was able to figure it out. So if I could go back 6 years ago, I would go deep in databases and Linux networking. Then also, one of the other things is on over-reliance on third-party libraries. So you would want to make an HTTP call. You go to Maven and get OK HTTP or any other tool out there. You are using, let's say, JSON. There's a JSON. So this is a bit controversial, but there's also always a question: should we reinvent the wheel? Should we be building our own libraries such that we understand them better and we go deep? Then one of the things I'm improving on is improving my test coverage, let's say with tools such as JUnit. So with the CI/CD, you will, if you read about it, you will look like after you push your code to a master branch, you deploy the code all the way to a production environment. So that is a continuous deployment. So For you to achieve this, you must have like a lot of tests in your code. So this is one of the things I will do. So strategies I've used to improve my skill sets over the years. So I'm a big Twitter user. So I will come across a new technology in Twitter or Medium articles. I will read its documentation, understand what it actually does. I have a new project. I give this technology a try. So in the corporate environment, you might not have this leeway a lot because you have a tight timelines. But when you are home, you can, let's say you want to give Redis a try. You can write a simple project to try it out. So one of the things that has helped me over the last 1 year or so is also Natujenge. So I think Kamuchu was able to introduce me to the concept of going through the protocols such as TCP, UDP, or the TCP IP networking model. So from this, I've been able to understand a lot of concepts. So I would have an issue where I need to capture a TCP dump. Now, like I'm able to read through a TCP dump. Yeah, and to leave you with a quote, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. So I think this is a mantra or a dogma that you can use to know that you'll always need to keep learning. Like every day is an opportunity to learn something new. So that's the presentation. I will take any questions in case anyone has a question they would like or a clarification. Yeah, so I can see a comment from Mwenda asking about Visual Basic being used in 2022. Yeah, I think that's a good comment, but you will find that most large corporates, they would have a particular legacy app that is generating millions of data, millions of cash, and they wouldn't like to upgrade it. So there's some bit of, I would say that's the bad side, whereby you would have to maintain something that was built in 2006, 2008 with a really old technology. But as developers, we normally try to push to upgrade these to new technologies such as Node.js. So as a new blood, when you're coming into the company, these are the things that you should always look to change. So you upgrade, let's say, your legacy application to a new exciting language, Java or any other. And at the end of the day, the business will be able to see the benefits of that. There's a question from Elangs asking from my experience, is it better to specialize in a tech stack or to be a jack of several stacks? Yeah, I would say not everything is cast to stone, but from the past few years, I would say at the start of your career, since you don't know like where your passion really lies, you can try out several stuff from React or from front-end technologies, from data science, from to back-end development or API development. Then over time, you will be able to see a place where you are really passionate. Like I've found colleagues who are really passionate about CSS and CSS and HTML. CSS normally gives me headaches, but for them, they are passionate on that. So I will say at the start, try out a lot of things. Then, in my opinion, over time, to be really good in something, I think you should pick an area where you focus on. So if you want to be a good data scientist, focus on that particular area. Or if you want to be a good backend developer, put all your effort in one particular area. But always be ready for change. I think so long as in computer science, so long as you know the fundamentals really well, the things I was talking about, a low level knowledge. So long as you know the way computers talk to each other, the way browsers work, the way databases work. I think one of the disadvantage on venturing in one stack, someday maybe that will be done away with. So maybe you had measured in jQuery and no one is using jQuery anymore. You can be able to switch to a new language very fast or a new stack very fast because you know the low level things in computer science. So that will be my opinion on that, on the stack.